There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Just a heads up, this episode includes mention of child sexual assault. We will not be going into details at all, but if this is a difficult topic for you, you might want to skip this one. So, Jeni, I'm so glad to meet you. It is Jeni I'm talking to at the moment.
It's lovely to meet you. Yes, it is. Yes.
And what do I say, that you're in charge of the system at the moment? Is that what I say?
I'd say I'm the current front runner.
Current front runner.
I'm the person that most people interact with.
And do you control when you are the front runner and when one of your alters comes through? Who's in charge of making that decision?
It's quite a dynamic process, so nobody controls it. It's more a case of people pop in and out to answer the question that's relevant to them.
From Mamamia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to a very special episode of No Filter. Jeni Haynes is a 52-year-old woman with more than 2,500 personalities, 2,682 to be exact, and everything about Jeni is exact. She can tell you who every one of those personalities are. They all have distinct names and identities, and each of them has helped her to stay sane.
My job as the entity currently known as Jeni is to go, okay, I am a suitcase. I'm the outside shell of a suitcase. And every night we construct the entity that is going to be Jeni for the next day. And so we put into the suitcase the skills and abilities we're going to need for the next day.
You see, her brain made them, all of them, to save her from the monster who began hurting her in unimaginable ways when she was a tiny little girl and didn't stop for 14 years. That monster was her father, and his name is Richard Haynes. It's really important to Jeni that you know that name, and that as many people as possible know that that man, her father, Richard Haynes, is a sexual predator of the most depraved kind. This story is not easy to hear, and this episode is not going to be for everyone. Let me be clear about that. In my whole life, I have never done or even heard an interview like it. I've never ever spent time with anyone like Jeni or with the remarkable folks who live inside her. Several of Jeni's personalities, or alters, emerged during the course of our conversation, and watching her face and hearing her voice change when they arrive is utterly seamless, but it's unlike anything I could have prepared for. You'll have to trust me when I tell you that when you're talking to Jeni and these different personalities emerge and start speaking, it's really normal and really easy to accept. You can actually choose to watch this special episode of No Filter. There is a link to a video version of the full episode in the show notes. But whether you watch the interview or listen to it, here is what Jeni wants you to know before we go any further. She's not a freak show or a sideshow or an attention seeker, and she's most definitely not crazy. In fact, Jeni may be one of the most sane and sensible people you've ever met. That was the verdict of her psychiatrist. It was the verdict of the police. And it was also the verdict of a judge when Jeni and several of her personalities made history in 2019 because they all testified in court. And the result is that Richard Haynes was convicted in a child sex abuse case that detectives called one of the most shocking they'd ever seen.
I impose an aggregate sentence of imprisonment for 45 years.
As a result of the abuse she experienced over 14 years, Jeni has developed a condition called dissociative identity disorder, or DID. It used to actually be called MPD, or multiple personality disorder. And in many ways, this condition is what saved her life. Because to cope with the horror of what was happening to her every day, around age 4, Jeni's mind did an extraordinary and really quite brilliant thing. It began to create new identities to shield her and to help her detach from the pain and the trauma. The first identity to arrive, fully formed, was Symphony, a 4-year-old girl who became the master of Jeni's system. And that's the word that people with dissociative identity disorder use to describe the way their mind works. The system encompasses all the different personalities that make up the entity called Jeni. And on the outside, that's what you see. You see Jeni. She looks like a fairly ordinary 52-year-old woman. But inside her, more than 2,500 different personalities are living. And depending on what Jeni needs to do, what she needs to talk about or who she needs to interact with at any particular time, on any particular day, the right personality for that will come forward and embody what from the outside still looks like Jeni, but sounds and speaks differently. Some of the personalities are female, like Symphony and Gabrielle and Linda, who you're going to meet, and some are male, like Little Ricky, Captain Busby, and Muscles, who is a 17-year-old boy who loves motorcycles and really wants to get his gun license. Muscles wants that for protection because the evidence of Jeni's father's crimes against her remains on her body today. She's permanently disabled by the abuse in ways that are quite life-altering. Now, Jeni was willing and even eager to talk about the details of what happened to her in our conversation. And you need to understand why. She said that hearing other people's reactions of shock when they hear what happened helps to validate her experience, and it makes her feel seen and heard in a way that is healing for her and her personalities, because as a child, they were never listened to, not even by Jeni's mother. But we've decided not to include those details in this episode because they are just too distressing. Jeni wrote a book earlier in the year. It's quite extraordinary. It's called The Girl in the Green Dress. And she joins me today on No Filter because she wants to share her story to help others. She wants everyone to know what happened to her because she has a voice now. And the monster who hurt her is in jail and he can't harm anyone ever again. Jeni's finally free of him. Today on No Filter, I'm speaking to Jeni, Symphony, Linda, Little Ricky, Captain Busby, Muscles, and Gabrielle. So I want to ask you about some of your alters. Tell me about Symphony and Muscles to start off with.
Okay, let's take the easy one, Symphony. Symphony created all of us. Okay, she is our first and she is kind of our mother. In a great many ways, she's our mother. We as alters walked out the back of her head fully formed when she needed us, which is a strange concept, I know. But Symphony is, she's amazing. She does everything. She is the child that Dad abused. And we are the people that help her to cope with him and anything else that happens in life that isn't him. She's amazing. She did all of this as a 4-year-old. She created herself. I don't even know how. Okay, you might hear some squeaking in the background.
Is that Holly?
That's Holly playing with a squeaky toy. Yeah, that's Holly.
What kind of dog is Holly?
She's a cavoodle. So she's a Cavalier King Charles poodle mix.
I've heard you say that it's Symphony on the cover of your book. There's a little girl on the cover of your book, and you say that's Symphony.
Yes.
But is that also Jeni? How is 4-year-old Jeni different to 4-year-old Symphony?
Well, the simplest answer to that is there is no 4-year-old Jeni. When Symphony took over, she took the birth child, Jennifer Margaret Linda, and put Jennifer Margaret Linda inside and took her place. So there never was a 4-year-old Jeni. We all answered to that name, but Symphony specifically never named any of her alters Jeni, because we were Jennifer Margaret Linda when we were interacting with the family. But inside, there is no Jeni. In fact, Jennifer Margaret Linda only rejoined us in about 2017, not long after Dad was arrested and brought to Australia. She was there, but she was a baby. It is Symphony on the cover because there was never a Jeni.
When Jeni rejoined you, was she an adult?
No, she was still a 6-month-old baby. And we had to get Symphony to let go of her in order to allow her to grow, because Symphony was keeping her safe as a 6-month-old baby. So when I say there's no Jeni, I mean it. She was a 6-month-old child. She never hit 4. And then she went from 6 months to 49, which was a huge jump. That was an entertaining day, I can tell you.
What was that day like? Tell me what happened on that day.
We had a chat with George, and we were talking about how Symphony was still protecting Jennifer. So he said the war is over. Let go.
Because your father had been arrested and Jeni was safe.
Yeah. So in 2017, we talked to George, and George said, let go.
Who's George?
George Blair West, my co-author, a psychiatrist, and he's just amazing. So he got Symphony to let go. Now, that was a physical opening her hands and letting go of the baby. And this is Jennifer at 6 months. It took 2 years for that process to be completed. And then Jennifer went from 6 months of age to 49 years in a matter of moments. It was the strangest feeling to find our original child, the original birth child, at 49 years old, with all of our skills, abilities, and memories. But she has like someone else's life because she didn't live any of it. So for her, it was a very strange experience, like waking up with amnesia and having all your family come and tell you, well, this is what you did. This is what you've been doing for 49 years. Are you having fun yet? And yeah, it was very, very strange. And she sat and she cried and just cried and cried because she got the memories of everything that Dad had done to her. And she wasn't crying for what Dad had done. She was crying for Symphony's sacrifice in taking that on and living that for her. And so it was a big day for her. And now she exists in the world. She's 52. She's growing normally. So she will have a birthday on our official birth date. And she's a fully active part of us, but she's almost like another alter because she hasn't taken over and pushed us to the side. She's joined us rather than replacing us.
Over the years before Jeni rejoined the group, Who was most often front-facing?
When we were children and interacting with Dad directly, it was Symphony. With Eric. That's always a mix. After the divorce, it was Eric, and Eric maintained as front runner until 1998. He found us George and then stepped back a little to let us officially be seen, but he was still front runner. I think it was about in the early 2000s, we integrated and we created a Jeni, our first ever Jeni. And then she was the face because we all were integrated into Jeni, except for Symphony. Yeah, that was tricky. Eric integrated into Jennifer Margaret Linda, only to discover that he was the only one who did. Everybody else had integrated into the Jeni that we were creating, and Symphony stepped out because there were things that she had not disclosed to George or to anybody else. And so she was still protecting the baby, the Jennifer Margaret Linda, and so she couldn't step into the integration, or she felt she couldn't. And then we had a Jeni that we'd made. And then in 2009, when we started to go back to the police, Jeni found that people came back to help her. So that Jeni then did all the legal stuff, and that Jeni fell apart the Christmas before the trial. So Christmas 2018, that Jeni fell apart, and the entity currently known as Jeni stepped up to the plate and changed her name completely from her previous name and became Jeni, the official who everybody dealt with. And at the moment, the entity that's around most of the time, so most people deal with the entity currently known as Jeni, but how to put this, but we are trying to let everybody come out and have fun and do fun things. So we're not as consistently single Jeni as we have been. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Front runners, they're a funny beastie.
And am I still talking to Jeni? How will I know if I'm talking to someone else? Will they make themselves known?
Okay, well, you asked a technical question, so I, as Linda, have popped out to answer your technical question.
Oh, hi, Linda. So you're tech support.
Yeah, tech support. I thought that the entity might have difficulty answering that question. So, yeah. But from 1984 to about 2003, we had a female body being run by a bloke.
What was that like?
I've just heard from Eric. It was fine right up to the clothing wars of 1996.
Tell me about those.
Oh, God. The clothing wars of 1996. They're really funny. They weren't at the time, but they were really funny. We have 3 genders. Okay, so we have boys, girls, and what we called the not girls. So when we wanted to dress, the boys wanted to wear jeans. Some of the girls wanted to wear pretty dresses, and the not girls, if we could have worn a sack and stapled it all the way down like armor, they'd have been happy because they didn't want to be female because females get raped. So they didn't want to be seen. They absorbed all the messages about, if you'd not been wearing that, you wouldn't have been raped. It's your fault. So they absorbed all of those messages. And so we would have clothing wars, and it would go something along the lines of this. Right, well, what are we wearing then? I want to wear that dress. I am not going out looking like a blood clot. But I like it. I like it. I don't care. I'm not going out in that dress. It makes me look like a fucking blood clot. Pick something else. How about this? Blue and green should never be seen without a colour in between. Remember that? Right. And this would go for an hour, and then it would be, right, jeans and a T-shirt. Shut up. And then we'd put on exactly almost a uniform that we always wore. Blue jeans and shirt.
Because it was what everyone could agree on.
Yeah, it was the only thing everyone could agree on. Should have been there for the underwear. Oh, my Lord. I like it to match. It's utilitarian. Nobody's going to see it. Who cares? And these went on every single morning.
But this is a technical question for Linda. I've got a couple more technical questions, and maybe Linda would like to answer them. With all of these different voices, how does anything get done? How do any decisions get made?
If in doubt, refer to Symphony. Symphony is the final voice. If we can't make a decision, we talk to Symphony. And Symphony gets she always gets the last say, first and last. So if she wanted to walk around looking like a flipping blood clot, then that's what we did.
Is Symphony still 4? Does she remain 4 years old?
Oh, no. Now, I've got to tread carefully here. Symphony is 18. All bar 3 of us are 18 because we met somebody, and the rule is if you want to kiss your special somebody, you've got to be 18. So we have been in a race to
grow up.
And the boys are like, I don't want to kiss him, so I don't have to grow, right? So we sent a rule down. Everybody has to be 18 or above because then we can do anything we want to do because we are of legal age to do it. So that allows for drinking, smoking, gun licenses, that sort of stuff.
The usual.
Yeah, the usual. Muscles is 18 now. He can have his gun license.
He'll be happy about that.
Oh, yeah. But Dad's in jail now. Can't use it anyway.
Is that why Muscles wanted to get his gun license?
No, it's quite the opposite. Muscles refused to become 18 while Dad was free because at 18 he could get a gun license and get a gun and, to quote, blow the fucker away. So Muscles has been 17 his entire life so as to avoid hitting 18 and getting the gun license and doing something that he believes is morally wrong, but personally right. So better to not have the gun, not be 18, and then it's a moot point. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Do your alters have relationships with each other, Jeni? Like, do some of them get along, some of them not get along?
Absolutely. Internal relationships have been formed over the years. That's my question. I'm having that one. Hello, I'm Symphony.
Symphony.
Hello.
Hi, Symphony. So great to meet you.
Hi.
What a legend you are.
Not really. Just did what had to be done. But all of our alters, all of my people have friendships, relationships, and working relationships. So people who did a similar job, they sort of collected together, like imagine a playground with lots of groups of people. Everybody had people around them to support them. Nobody did nobody. Little Ricky. Little Ricky's the only person who did his job in isolation. And he was isolated through his choice, because he didn't want to taint anybody else with his job.
What was his job, Symphony?
His job was to send people out. So sometimes what Dad did was very overwhelming, and different people would be doing particular jobs, like the people who sat in the nose to block what Dad smelt like. Sometimes Dad would arrive and he'd stink. Actually, every time he would arrive and he stank permanently. But as he was doing things, sometimes that stink got worse, and that would overpower somebody who was trying to deal with it. And so Ricky had to go and tap the next person on the shoulder and say, "You're up. You need to replace this person who's getting overwhelmed." And so he felt that he was just as bad as Dad because he was abusive. He was sending people out to be abused. And it seems funny to give an example around a smell, but Dad smells like the most unwashed man on the planet, combined with the smell of burning Bakelite. And it is rancid. It is a unique smell. I've never smelt it with anybody else ever. And it's an absolutely overwhelming smell. It was such that I had to create people who could stop my nose from smelling it. And of course, they smelt it. They took the smell away so that I could focus on what I had to do with Dad, which was invariably icky. So little Ricky would have to send people out to deal with the jobs.
That's a hard job for little Ricky.
So he's the only one of us that was isolated. Yeah. So he wears a grey suit like Dad. He's got big glasses like Dad. And even his name, Little Ricky, is a short form of my dad's name, Richard. So he identifies with Dad really badly.
Is little Ricky still around? He doesn't have a job to do anymore.
Yes. Yes, he does. Now he gets to choose who gets to go to the arcade and who gets to go and watch the movies. So we've taken his job and we've twisted it so that now when you get a visit from little Ricky, it's positive. You've been called in to look after something positive. So we're subverting all of our old jobs.
I like it. I think that's very clever. Are you still making new altars, Symphony, or do you not need to make any more?
Oh, no. The last altar I made was the student in 1990. I haven't made anybody since then.
What did the student have to do?
She went to university and studied. So she's the one that got the 3 degrees.
She's very clever. Why did you stop making altars?
Because we weren't living with Dad anymore. We didn't need altars. We didn't need new people because people were only built to help me to deal with things that distracted me from dealing with Daddy. And if Daddy wasn't there, then those things aren't distractions anymore.
I see.
And we made the student because we got into university. So we made a student to get us there.
With the number 2,500, are there actually 2,500 altars? And are they all still, like, do some of them just kind of go on standby, or are they all present all of the time?
Okay. There are 2,681 others. So there's me and 2,681. Not 2,500, but it's a nice round figure, see.
We don't want to lose that extra 181.
It just got rounded down. Better than rounded up, I guess. And before you ask, we know exactly and precisely how many people there are because Muscles runs a democracy. I get the final vote, but everybody else votes on everything. So he has the voting slips. So we know exactly how many people we've got because we got voting slips from everybody. It was a big question a couple of years ago.
And does that vote happen like quickly, the vote, or it can take time?
The vote is always quick, but the discussion leading up to it can take some time.
Do any alters ever get to retire?
Yes. So the Jeni that collapsed in Christmas 2018, she was tapped on the shoulder by the assassin and was officially assassinated. We have a small group of alters that are officially assassinated. When things get too much for them, we assassinate them.
That sounds quite brutal, assassination.
It does, but that's because it has to be scary because it's a final resort. It's the thing that you do when everything is too overwhelming and you've got to stop. But if you get assassinated, you're taken by the assassin to a door. He opens the door and pushes you through the door and locks the door behind you. You are now officially assassinated. But if we were to take cameras through that door, there's a huge room with beanbags and toys and books, and it's got everything we've ever wanted we have in that space. And the people that go in there, they're retired. They get to read books and play with toys and watch TV for the rest of eternity. So we have to make assassination sound scary because otherwise everybody would want to be assassinated and we'd all move into this one room and we'd be running Jeni from within that room. But nobody ever dies. They're assassinated, but they're still alive. See, we're not just multiple. We're sneaky and multiple.
I get it. It's a very ingenious, complex system.
It is complicated, yes. I will admit, it wasn't too bad when there was 5 of us, but it got complicated after that.
You know, Symphony, sometimes people say you wear 10% of your wardrobe 90% of the time. So like you've got a whole lot of clothes, but you'll probably most of the time wear 10% of them.
Yeah.
Is it similar with alters? Do you have like lead roles in a way, and then some of the other 2,681 are sort of much more in the background? Is it like that?
Yes and no. Our world is divided into 2 parts. There's the outside world, like what we're doing now, talking to you. And then there's the inside world. Now, the inside world, everybody has equal attention because everybody is doing their thing. Most of the time, everybody does their thing and nobody really thinks about it. In the outside world, we have a set of faces that interact with the outside world. So that one of the things about having so many heads is consistency's a big problem. So that's why we have the front runner. And what happens with us is if we're in a setting where we need the knowledge or experience of another alter that is like a backroom boiler girl or boy, they will come and they will sit beside the face that's interacting with the world. And so their knowledge and experience is available, but they personally are pretending to be Jeni. We are all expert at pretending to be Jeni. We can even sound like Jeni if we work hard enough. We can sound really like Jeni and take away all of our personal qualities and be the Jeni that everybody expects us to be. It's hard work and it's not fun, but sometimes it's important to do it. So we can have up to 31 people in the body at the same time. After that, it gets a bit unmanageable. It was for a long time up to 24, but it's spread to 31. And so if we've got a big task, like exams are really good because everybody who attended that lecture rocks up to do the exam, which makes exams really hard. When you've got multiple choice.
Because everybody wants to write their different answer.
Exactly. In different handwriting. Consistency is not easy.
How do you do that?
Badly.
Is that your job, Symphony? Is that to manage the rabble?
No. Most of the time it happens organically and nobody's in charge. It just happens. But sometimes Eric used to manage the rabble, but I don't have to do that. They're all mine. I just rock up and say the answer is this and this is what they do. I'm the final casting vote.
You are the final casting vote. Symphony, some people might have thought that once Jeni's father and your father was sent to jail for 45 years, so he'll never be released, he'll die in jail.
Hopefully in a long time.
The system that you created to protect Jeni when she was a little child, some people might think, well, that system isn't required anymore because Jeni's safe, justice has been served, this man is being punished for what he did, and the world has acknowledged that it really happened to all of you. So what do you say to those people who are like, well, there's no need for you all anymore?
Hi, I'm Little Ricky. That's a question for me.
Hey, Little Ricky.
Hi. On the surface, we have no further use for our folks, but they've lived in shit. Their whole world has been shit. I don't want to integrate anybody until they have got something fun as their final experience. If these people could all be seen as individual victims of crime, individual children, our response to an abuse victim is to help them move on. We don't shoot them. We don't go, oh, good, well, you've got your abuser behind bars. Now we take you out back and shoot you. And that is kind of what is implied in, well, now you don't need them, you can get rid of them. And I've said, nah, we're not doing that. I'm not having anybody integrate whose sole experiences have been unpleasant, because that's like taking them out back and shooting them. So what we're doing is we're giving everybody the chance to do their favorite thing or the thing that they've always wanted to do. So there was a kid who wanted to eat pineapple. Don't ask. I don't even know why, but they wanted to eat pineapple. That's all they wanted. So they ate pineapple and they're really happy now that they've had their pineapple. There's somebody else who wanted to watch TV because Dad wouldn't let them watch TV. So we set them up and let them watch TV. There's others that like Charlotte, who likes the bells and whistles of the casino. But at 4, she's not gambling. So we take her to the arcade. You get the bells and whistles, but you're not actually gambling. Sort of, maybe. Depends on how you look at it. So she gets to go to the arcade a lot. There's kids in here who've had their names changed because their names have come from Dad. So Maggot was renamed by I believe the term that everybody's using at the moment is special someone. renamed her to Isabel because that was his favourite name. She's embraced that. Now as Isabel, she has put aside all those thoughts that she is disgusting and dirty and reminds people of maggots. And that's all been pushed aside because now she's been named and she's got a name, a new identity, and she's enjoying her life with her special someone. We're embracing all the things that we were never allowed to have. So colour, textures, tastes. We watch TV, we play games, and the whole notion of playing games is fraught because games have multiple meanings. But we play games. One of the hardest things for Symphony is we want to play Dungeons and Dragons. Great. But the whole point of Dungeons and Dragons is it's a fantasy. It's not real. Well, Symphony, this is a big sticking point for her because she always tells the truth. So playing a fantasy game and allowing herself to explore what she considers as lies. I am not a male dragonborn of a black dragon. I am a actual female child. Embracing what she considers lies has been a real learning curve for her because she understands there's a difference between lying for gain or telling stories. We had to actually sit down and get her to read fiction before she could even do this. And we had to say to her, you know, this is an okay thing to do. But I don't want anybody to integrate until they are ready. And they will not be ready until they have done whatever it is they've always wanted to do.
Yeah, until they've had some good experiences.
Exactly.
Little Ricky, what's the difference between assassination and integration?
Oh, that is such a good question. Okay. Assassination means you no longer have to do your job. You're still alive, but you're not doing your job. Mm-hmm. That's simple. An assassinated alter can integrate. That's easy. Integration is like making a cake. You are an ingredient. You might be one sultana. This person beside you might be 3 cherries. You don't know. You make a cake. You put all the ingredients in the bowl and you mix it together. It now becomes something different from what it was. But those parts are still there.
Understand.
Yeah, so integration is more a blending and sharing of skills so that the person that you're integrating into has access to those skills. So another way of seeing it might be putting all the pencils in a pencil case. Those pencils are individual, but in the pencil case, they are a collective.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, great.
I do. I really understand. Little Ricky, is that still you or is Linda back because we're talking about technical things?
Oh, no, this is still me.
Okay.
Admittedly, I've got a number of people working with me to answer these questions, but it's still me mostly. We had a very strange analogy, fuck up. That's a good word.
Yeah.
We used the analogy of the cake. And it worked right up to the minute that people started to remove themselves from the integrative whole and come back as separate alters. And that was interesting because suddenly the cake was no longer a good analogy because the egg just walked back out.
Yeah, I understand.
So we had to find something else because that wasn't...
Maybe more like a fruit cake where the sultanas and the cherries are still sort of whole but within the form of a cake.
Exactly. That works. Yeah. So
I get it.
what we're finding is people are blending. People have already started the blending process. So everybody is still here. Everybody is still individual, but they're working in teams as opposed to individual now. So
I understand.
Good. So when we want something or we need a skill, instead of relying solely on one person to provide that skill, the blended people are instantly available. I said a moment ago that I'm getting support at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's because some blended entities are sitting there beside me, making sure I have access to information about, like Mum's Army.
Yeah.
So as soon as they knew I was going there, a representative immediately arrived. I've got Captain Busby sitting beside me talking because she's talking about Mum's Army, which, given that we only moved out of home a year ago, Mum's Army is still highly active. I mean, we have contact with Mum all the time, either by email or by phone or face-to-face. So Mum's Army is still there, being protective, supportive, checking out what she needs, getting onto aged care if she needs more support, talking to her providers, fixing the techie-nucky shit. That army is still there. The jobs are different, but the army is still there. Make sense?
I understand. Yeah, total sense. I'm not sure if you're the right person, little Ricky, but I wanted to ask about Jeni's relationship with her mother. And for those who haven't read the book or don't know the story, they might wonder, did Jeni's mother know about what was going on? And when did Jeni try to tell her?
Okay, that one is a bulk answer, and I'm going to step out and let somebody else take that one. Busby, I think you're up. Hello.
Hi.
You're Mia, right?
Captain Busby?
Hi.
I am. Lovely to meet you.
Hi. You asked a tricky question now. Okay. Can I break that question up a little bit so that I can answer it in parts?
Of course.
Okay. Did my mum know? Yes and no. My mum knew some things. Yep. My mum saw things, but when she went to Dad as the only other adult in her world, don't forget, Dad isolated us all. So the only other adult Mum's got to go to is my abuser. So when she goes to him and says, Jeni's bruised, Jeni's bleeding, Jeni's got bruises in weird places, Jeni doesn't want to go to school, Jeni's got stomach aches all the time, Dad had all his excuses ready because he wasn't explaining what was wrong with me. He was making sure she never put 2 and 2 together and got 4. So he would say, I'm attention seeking. I'm clumsy. I'm stupid. I don't want to go to school because I've got school phobia. And so I'm faking tummy aches because then I can skip school. He would blame my friends. Oh, I was having fights with a friend of mine and therefore I didn't want to go to school. He had every excuse to ensure that Mum looked outside of the family and outside of the family home for answers to her questions.
He was cunning and he was manipulative.
Yeah. So yes, Mum saw. And in a way, you could say Mum knew. But when Mum tries to understand, she's sent out of the family home, and she's given other things to think about than it's him raping me. And so that's why I say yes and no. I don't think my mother grasped what she was seeing. She was on medications that made her dopey. But, and this is the thing, Mum said that she was on medications. In the 60-minute interview, she makes it very clear she was on antidepressants. But what she didn't make clear was that my father was giving her some form of medication in her nightly Milo, and it would wipe her out. It was some kind of sedative or some kind of additional medication that interacted with the antidepressants. Because let's face it, antidepressants don't turn you into a zombie.
No.
But
so he was drugging her?
Yes, he was drugging her. And it was in her nightly Milo. We bought Milo, years later, and she had one sip of Milo and she was out like a light. So her brain believes Milo equals you go to sleep. And so this was clearly something that was done so frequently, it became associated with Milo.
And when did she find out what had happened?
Oh. The trying to tell question. Judas started trying to tell when we were 8. He told her, I don't like Daddy's games. And Dad shut that down really quickly by saying that that's because we don't play fair, we cheat, which wasn't true. We weren't talking about Scrabble. I was talking about the kind of games that no child should ever have to play. And they weren't games. Be clear, this was not games. This was
abuse,
sexual assault on an industrial scale. So Judas tried to tell. Then we kept trying to tell. And every time we told, even just a little bit, we were instantly denied. Jeni's a liar. Jeni makes up stories. Jeni doesn't know the truth, which really upset Symphony, as I'm sure you can understand. We have held one thing absolutely, it's our prime directive. We tell the truth, even when it's difficult. And so your question about Mum knowing is super difficult to answer without
I understand.
making unpleasantness for my mum. Yes, my mum knew, but she didn't know in a way that made it easy to act on.
I understand. Have you all forgiven her? How have you forgiven her?
With a great deal of difficulty. We forgive Mum because we want to continue our relationship with our mother. I don't want to lose my mum. And she's my queen. I said that in the book. Actually, it's really funny that the queen has just recently died. It was like she put a full stop at the end of my need to see Mum as a queen by dying. Of course, Jeni's delighted about the arrival of King Charles. She's been waiting for that for a long time. She's been dying to see what he'll do. But it's almost like the Queen has said, you don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to do this anymore. We'll just die and have done with it.
Why did it stop? How did it stop? How did you make it stop?
The abuse.
Yeah.
Mum got a divorce. My father moved out of the house, taking my sister with him. And the sexual abuse and physical abuse finished, but the emotional abuse continued because we had to keep having contact with him and my sister, and that whole interaction was abusive. But the sex abuse ended when my mum decided to get a divorce.
When you were 11?
14.
14.
We had 3 more years of
14.
abuse after Australia. We went back to the UK, and trust me, he didn't stop. He didn't stop until he actually moved out of the house with my sister and went to Wales. So I had another 3 years of torture before it all ended. So although the story for Australia is from 4 till 11, he did this from younger than 6 months old until I was 14. So Australia, because of jurisdictional problems, Australia can only deal with what happened in Australia. And the UK can only deal with what happened in the UK. We need some sort of system whereby a country can say, this person lived in our jurisdiction. We're going to take hold of everything that we did, and we're going to charge for England, or we're going to charge for what was done in America. And we need a system where that can be legally done, not just in Australia and the UK, but across the whole planet. So abusers don't get charged with only what happened in one jurisdiction, because it gives a misleading story.
It's not fair. Yeah. Whose idea was it to go to the police?
Muscles. Oh, yeah, that's a Muscles job. He went to the police twice.
Was he the one that gave the statements? And who was in court?
Yes and no. We all gave the statements.
Was Muscles worried that you wouldn't be believed when you went to the police the second time?
We were all worried about that. Yeah. So.
But Muscles said, we've got to do it.
That I did.
Hey, Muscles.
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I took us to the police station. I was the big, strong bloke that stormed in and sat down and said, have I got a story for you? But it was really hard because we'd not been believed before.
Muscles, how did you feel when you saw him in court?
Symphony saw him and she goes, oh, I was a big man yesterday, but boy, you ought to see me now. So he wasn't what we expected, because he was going to be respectable, right? He has used his respectability as a reflective mirror for so long. So we're expecting him in a suit. He rocks up in prison jumpsuit and we're just like, whoa. The thing I felt when I saw him in court was relief. Utter relief for me personally.
Why?
Because I don't have to shoot him. I've waited so long to get him off the streets and protect the unknown child that to see him in the dock, it was such a relief. Now I can breathe. Now it's real. He is wearing handcuffs. He is surrounded by police officers. I don't have to kill him now just to make sure that he doesn't do this to anybody else. So the relief was palpable.
Did everyone feel the same way? I imagine some of you were scared.
Everybody was terrified. Bear in mind, this is first day of court. And all we're saying is, it's okay because we got a plan. Doesn't matter what he does because we got a plan. And we're going to do that plan. We have worked it out. We know what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So there's panic, but reassurance at the same time. So Eric's reassuring everybody, it's okay, we got a plan. Don't worry, Jeni's got a plan. And they're like, oh my God, he's there, he's real. Yeah, but don't worry, Jeni's got a plan.
What was the plan?
Now, plan, waive right to anonymity. Sex abuse survivors are granted anonymity. But if your abuser is your family member, that gives your family member anonymity as well, which is fine if that's what you want, but it means that the media can't report on the story. Or at least if they do, it's got to be de-identified. So your abuser never gets the community outrage that they get if it's a stranger who's attacked you. Then they can say their name. They don't identify the victim, but they can say the name of the offender.
What a choice to have to make.
Yeah, so you can protect yourself and by extension, protect your abusive family member, or you jettison your protections under the law and you make everybody know what he did. Well, in order to protect unknown children for eternity, we chose to waive our right to anonymity. And it was a big choice. We had kept our mouth shut as per the police requests for, by this stage, 10 years. It was 2019. He finally gets into court. That's 10 years after we went to the police. It's been a damn long time. And we've not been able to talk about it. We couldn't put up #MeToo because that could kill the case. We were told one word from us could kill the case. And so I phoned the police and say, if you tell me the word, I promise not to say it. But it got really difficult. And we knew that the only way to ensure that everybody knew his name and everybody knew what he did and everybody was safe from him was to waive our right to anonymity.
You were geared up for a long trial, I imagine. All of you are ready, or as ready as you could have been, but it didn't go down that way.
No, that was annoying because we're ready to tell everything he did.
He only lasted 2 hours before he pled guilty.
Yeah. So over 2 days, we talked for 2 hours, 45 minutes over 2 days, and he couldn't hack Symphony telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And he didn't like it, so he rolled over. But he rolled over not because he was guilty and feeling guilty and needed to make this go away because, it was traumatizing his victim. No, he pled guilty to stop everybody from hearing what he did because the media were in the courtroom ready to report on what he did. And he didn't want details of what he did to get into the media. I know this man. I know what kind of a slime bucket he is. This was not, I plead guilty to make life easy for Jeni, because that's not him. He pled guilty to shut us up, which he succeeded in until he got his victim impact statement. He didn't like that, I can tell you. But he sat in court smirking.
Were you in court when he was charged?
One of the things that was really important for us was we wanted to hear the indictment. We wanted to hear him be faced with his crimes and hear him plead. So the judge allowed us to be there when they read the indictment, which is quite unusual. But she said, as it affects me and nobody else, it was okay. And we were there when he went, not guilty, not guilty. Fast forward 3 weeks and he's in court and they reread the indictment and he's got to go, guilty, guilty. And the judges go, can you speak up? Guilty, guilty. Oh, look, lost some volume there, haven't you?
Yeah. Muscles, you're a legend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, though, I've got a question that is not for you, and I'm not sure who it's for, but either little Ricky or you will work out. I want to ask about Jeni's special someone, and I feel like that's not a question you can answer, Muscles.
No, I could answer a couple of questions about him, yes, but I'll leave that to Gabrielle, I think.
Okay.
That'll be a girly question.
It's a bit of a girly question,
All
it's
right.
true.
All right, well, nice to talk to you. I'll go get the girls.
Thanks, Muscles. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gabrielle.
Lovely to meet you, Gabrielle. What's your job?
I hold all of Jeni's femininity and all of Jeni's sexuality.
You're exactly who I want to talk to.
I kept it safe. So you have questions.
You said you kept it safe.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. I want to ask about Jeni's femininity and Jeni's sexuality because after what she experienced, how is she ever able to embrace that part of herself and be intimate?
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. We've had 3 boyfriends. First one was an amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy, but we were absolutely unable to be intimate.
Yeah. How old were you when you had that boyfriend?
20. Met him while I was doing adult matriculation at Oxley. Year 11 and year 12 done in 9 months. It was a lot of work, and we then met Michael while we were doing that. And it was lovely. It was absolutely lovely. But I was not in love with him. Having fallen in love finally, I know that I was not in love with Michael. So that's Michael number 1. Michael number 2, we met after the first trial. Nice guy. I must say this, nice guy, and probably did not deserve what we did to him. We used Michael number 2 solely to prove we could have sex, to prove that we weren't broken. So there was minimal emotional connection, but we could do the physical. So I proved that we could do the physical. An absolutely shit reason for going out with somebody, and it was the wrong thing to do. And if I could ever find him again, I would sit down with him and say, look, I am so sorry. That is not how I should have treated you. You were worth much more than that. But hey, I was 28 and I'd just been declared a liar under English law and I wasn't thinking straight. But I proved I could have sex. Yeah. And then from 1998 until 2019, I was completely and utterly celibate. No people in my world. There was so much discovery. I'm going through therapy. There's so much understanding, but I got more and more concerned that our discussions of what happened to us would damage our sexuality, that I locked it away. I had very little to do with the world from 1999 through to 2019.
Did you feel lonely?
No, not really, because I'm not interacting with the external world, but I'm still interacting with our internal world.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, whether they meet different needs.
They do. After the clothing wars, I just disengaged because there wasn't much point interacting in the world and expressing our femininity when our femininity wasn't wanted. We became as asexual as they come, to quote me from a previous conversation. So I just held on to our sexuality, but our sexuality is confused, highly confused, because we feel that we were raped into heterosexuality because that was our experience, with some minor detouring. That was mostly our experience. And so we were so frightened. We were rejecting of heterosexuality. And so I just took anything to do with our sexuality and locked it away. We started to open it up when we met our special someone. Let's call him Adam. It's not his name. Let's just call him Adam. It's going to be easier.
First man. How did you meet Adam?
I met him at a Christmas party that neither of us wanted to be at. So I said, all right, I suppose I've got to go. I'll give it 30 minutes and then we're blowing this pop stand. And at 29 minutes and 17 seconds, Adam says hello, and he's wearing this amazing T-shirt. And I just turn and look at it, and Symphony says, that girl looks like she belongs on a Meatloaf album cover. And our conversation started with music, and they're still going. We've been in a tentative relationship it'll be 3 years at Christmas.
Wow. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Did he meet everyone straight away or over time?
Oh, gosh, no. Over time. Adam is incredible because he can tell the difference between us by the way we kiss, which kind of blows my mind, actually.
He's very intuitive, obviously.
Yes. He has relationships with quite a number of the girls. He has bromances, I think is the term, with a lot of the guys. And he's just amazing. He's so encouraging of everything we want to do, everywhere we want to go. He encourages us to explore. He said, your expectation is that you are going to be heterosexual. Before you commit to that, let's explore options. And that's been really freeing because that means we can actually feel we are making the choice as opposed to doing what is expected.
Yeah, I see that. I can
So he's
imagine.
amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It would never be boring for him, just like it's never boring for you.
It's never boring, but it can be a bit overwhelming. He has said that sometimes we can be a lot of hard work, but that's okay. He likes that.
Can he request, like if he feels like hanging out with a certain person, can he request that person come forward?
Absolutely, and we always do. Whenever he wants to spend time with a specific person, we respect that request every time. Even if we had plans for something else, if Adam wants to be with a particular person, off we trot.
What about intimacy? I mean, does it feel weird having everyone there?
Doesn't work that way. We have constructed a sacred space in our inner landscape. And when we spend time with Adam, if we're playing the Switch, it doesn't matter. But if we're doing something intimate, we go into the sacred space and lock the door. And anybody who wants to come in has to knock. So even if Adam asks for a specific person, they can't just walk through the door. They have to knock and be let in, and then the door is sealed again behind them. And that's how we swap out. But spending time in that sacred space gives him security to know that, he's not making love to 2,681 people at the same time.
Oh, that would be tiring.
Yes, especially if you've only one man and all that number of girls. Whoa.
A long queue. Long queue going down the block.
Yes, yes. That would be exhausting on a number of levels. But it's about being respectful. And we have a never-ending conversation about consent. Consent is the first and last thing we talk about. And we have been known to stop in the middle and check for consent because we've had consent taken away from us so much that having consent, giving consent, receiving consent is so important. And it also means that Adam has the chance to control what he consents to as well. So making love is easy, okay, because we're in love with him. We are completely in love with him. It's easy. The difficulty is remembering to make love in ways that are very different from the way in which we were raped by Dad.
Yeah.
And that's the trickiest bit of all, is how to negotiate that acts that might on the surface be identical, because let's face it, there's only a certain number of ways you can do the do.
Yeah.
Acts that look to be identical to what Dad did to us are infused with very different meanings.
Yeah.
So the consent conversations are really important. The checking in is really important, and changing the way in which it's done is really important. And so certain acts of intimacy become infused with the concept of this is a gift. Doing this is a very intimate act, and I'm doing this, it's a gift. It's a gift of intimacy as opposed to a crime.
You sound happy. You sound
I am.
You sound very much like a woman in love.
Oh, good, because I am. It's wonderful.
And a woman who has found immense healing.
Yes, yes.
I wanted to ask, we've talked about a lot of things, and we've talked about a lot of really difficult things, and I know that talking about them can't be easy. How will you all feel afterwards? Will you feel exhausted? Will some people who weren't involved in this conversation be front-facing to give the others a rest?
Well, the feeling we have right now as this draws to a close is exhilaration. We feel exhilarated. We have told our truth. We have told the truth. And we've demonstrated that MPD is not a sideshow. We've demonstrated the ease with which we switch, the fact that we are normal people with normal interests, concerns, worries, fears.
Yeah.
We've demonstrated by just sliding from one person to the other that really MPD could be all around you and you wouldn't notice unless you're looking really carefully. You could be friends with someone with MPD and not know.
Yeah.
We've also, once again, battered Dad with the reality of what he did. And we've got his name out there. And so more people will be aware that Richard Haynes is a scumbucket. And that's important because of the secrecy around sex abuse. And so somebody who is going through the process of reporting their scumbucket might look at this interview and go, actually, you gain so much more from waiving your right to anonymity and having your personal scumbucket in the media than you do by hiding them. Nobody talks about this. If I can talk about this and make a change in just one person's life, that's wonderful. So I'm hoping somebody will watch this and go, oh my God, I treat my ex-family member exactly like their abuser does. I need to change. Because as survivors, we are constantly told to change. I have changed to fit in with everybody. But they are the ones that need to change. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm the healthy one. And I've got MPD.
Sure are.
And yet, according to the psychiatrist, I'm the healthiest person in my family. So that's a spit out.
You are.
So if people can understand that MPD equals victim of crime, MPD equals a family that is non-supportive, even when they want to be supportive. My mum, my brother, they want to be supportive. But because of the way they've lived, their support isn't as effective as it could be because it's wrapped up in a package made by my dad and my dad's treatment of me. And if people can understand that and try to fight against it, even if they say, hey, I recognize that I'm treating you the way Uncle Murphy did. I'm trying to be different, work with me. That is what we need to hear. Because in therapy, what we hear is the only person you can change is yourself. And I have shaved bits here and smoothed bits there and punched holes here to fit in with everybody. And it's only in the last 3 years I've said, fuck it, I'm going to be me.
You are a bloody legend, Jeni Haynes, and Muscles and
Thank
Symphony and Gabrielle and Captain Busby and everybody else and little Ricky, everyone else that I was so lucky enough to meet today.
Thank you.
Your story is extraordinary. Your book is masterful and your courage is boundless.
Thank you.
So many people owe you a debt of gratitude for your honesty and your courage. Jeni, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was one of the most incredible, impactful conversations that I've ever had on this show. I recorded this No Filter from my studio at home, and we recorded for over 2.5 hours, and I don't think I moved during that time. I find it notoriously difficult to sit still and concentrate, not in No Filters so much, but certainly after an hour. I mean, my God. But I was absolutely riveted, and I'm sure you were as well listening to that. And we really wanted to emphasize the fact that it's not easy I don't mean it's not easy for me to interview someone who is traumatized, but I always do it, and we always approach it here at No Filter with a huge amount of care and sensitivity. And we always make sure that the person we're interviewing feels completely in control. We discuss at the start of the interview what they're comfortable talking about, what they're not comfortable talking about. We give them every opportunity to withdraw their consent for some of the things that they might have said. And we always make sure that they are safe, that someone is with them, and that the whole experience is as, I won't say positive, although in Jeni's case, she used the word exhilarated for how she felt at the end, which I thought was really interesting. So what you need to know is that Jeni is okay. She's more than okay. She's happy. And she feels vindicated. And part of that vindication is telling her story. In her book, The Girl in the Green Dress, which you should definitely buy if you love this podcast. There's a link in our show notes. And of course, in this podcast. And if you do want to see Jeni and watch how that interview played out and what it was like to watch her as the different personalities came forward and how her body language changed and her posture changed and her facial expressions changed, I highly recommend you watch the video. There's also a link to that in the show notes. The assistant producer on this very special episode is Emmeline Peterson. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff. I'm grateful to everybody who was involved in this episode, including our social team, all of our podcast team, everybody who worked on making this experience as good and as positive as possible for Jeni and for everyone who is listening. Remember, please call Lifeline if you need any support. Their number is 13 11 14. I'm Mia Friedman. Thank you for having me in your ears.